Due to an unexpected incident, I was forced to marry the brother of the man I loved. After the wedding, I humiliated Ethan in every possible way. Unexpectedly, my family went bankrupt overnight. The illegitimate son I had humiliated became the largest shareholder of the company and even proposed a divorce. I looked at the divorce papers and sneered. As soon as your first love returned, you couldn't wait to get rid of me. Ethan, I didn't expect you to be so devoted. Chapter 1. At a class reunion, I drew a dare that required me to kiss my husband's brother through a tissue for a minute. Everyone cheered. Come on, Nora, no cheating in the game. Seeing my silence, someone else chimed in. Are you scared because your husband is here? Yeah, Nora, are you afraid of your husband? I glanced at Ethan, who was sitting opposite me with a blank expression, and smirked. I picked up a tissue and placed it over my lips, speaking suggestively. It's just a game. We're not the type to back down. With that, I hooked my arm around the neck of the man beside me and leaned in. Separated by a thin layer of tissue, I could feel the heat of Sean's breath. Sean's ears turned red, and he closed his eyes involuntarily. I, however, was distracted. I secretly observed Ethan out of the corner of my eye. Everyone around us was screaming. Only he remained calm, peeling an orange slowly. Suddenly, I lost interest. When the minute was up, I ended the kiss hastily. Nora, how does it feel to kiss the school heartthrob? I licked my lips and smiled, as if savoring the moment. Not bad. Ethan had finished peeling the orange and was now meticulously removing the segments. Haha, after all these years, Nora, you've finally fulfilled your teenage dream. I took a sip of wine and smiled faintly. Kissing Sean had indeed been my longtime wish. Back then, everyone at school knew I liked Sean, and he wasn't indifferent to me either. Our families were well matched, and we were just a step away from being together. But during our graduation trip, I accidentally fell into the water and was rescued by his brother, Ethan, in a disheveled state. Rumors spread incessantly after that. My father, a traditional and proud man, thought that since Ethan had seen me in such a state and the rumors were so bad, it would be better for me to marry him. Of course, I refused. Not only did I not love him, but Ethan was also an illegitimate child of the family, someone who didn't even deserve to be on the stage. Why should I marry him because of an accident? This wasn't feudal society. I cried, threw tantrums, and even went on a hunger strike, but my parents were adamant about marrying me off to Ethan. At the wedding, I was unhappy. I deliberately spilled wine on him during the toast and publicly complained about his bad breath when the officiant asked us to kiss, causing everyone to laugh and mock him. My father was furious, but Ethan remained silent and completed the ceremony. On our wedding night, I refused to let him share the bed and turned off the air conditioning. Ethan accepted it silently, and the next day he had a high fever. Even so, he never lost his temper with me. At one point, I wondered if he was a reincarnated saint. Chapter 2. Lost in my thoughts, I didn't hear Sean calling me. It wasn't until a friend nudged me that I snapped back to reality. What's up? My friend gestured with her chin. Your husband is leaving. She whispered. Is he angry? Aren't you going to calm him down? Angry? Could Ethan, the saint, get angry? I looked over at him. He had already picked up his coat from the back of the chair. The dim light in the room made it hard to see his expression. But inexplicably, I felt a distance between us. I squinted my eyes and said lazily, Are you tired? But I'm not done having fun. Ethan's voice seemed to come from another world. It's fine. You continue. I'll go first. Leave? I frowned instinctively. In our 3 years of marriage, Ethan had never left me alone in such situations. He must really be angry. Sean glanced at Ethan. It's okay, Nora. I'll take you home when it's over. All right. I leaned back. Thanks, Sean. Ethan nodded at us and turned to leave. Looking at the peeled orange in the fruit bowl, I felt a sudden irritation and downed my drink in one gulp. In the end, it was Sean who took me home. When we got married, my father bought a 3-story villa as our new home to appease me. The first time I brought Ethan home, I mocked him. I heard you and your mom lived in a slum. The family hasn't even acknowledged you yet. How does it feel to live in such a big house for the first time? As usual, he didn't respond, and I cursed him for being mute. Chapter 3. The next morning, I woke up with a splitting headache. Every time I drank too much, Ethan would prepare a glass of honey water and a hangover soup for me. I reached out habitually, but my hand found nothing. Seeing the empty nightstand, I sneered. Well, the mute has grown a spine and is throwing a tantrum. I got up, enduring the headache. When I reached the dining room, I saw Ethan having breakfast. I paused and asked the housekeeper for a glass of honey water. Then I pulled out the chair opposite Ethan and sat down. The breakfast spread was sumptuous, and the aroma made me swallow my saliva. To be honest, the only thing I was satisfied with about Ethan was his cooking skills. I heard it was because his mother, who was a mistress, didn't care about him. She took the money from the family to gamble, and Ethan had to learn to cook for himself. When I first heard about this, I scoffed. Cooking? Who can't do that? With a sense of challenge, I tried cooking, almost blew up the kitchen, and ended up in the hospital with food poisoning, making a fool of myself. I blamed Ethan for it. After being discharged, I dumped all the breakfast he made on his bed. Ethan didn't complain. He silently changed the sheets and washed the dishes. Later, I vented to my friends. No wonder he's an illegitimate child. He has no pride. But now, this prideless illegitimate child was clearly throwing a tantrum, making breakfast only for himself. I drank the honey water prepared by the housekeeper, frowning slightly. It tasted a bit bland. Putting down the glass, I looked at Ethan, who was eating breakfast expressionlessly, and teased. What's wrong? Are you mad about last night? He glanced at me indifferently. I squinted and mocked him. Didn't you expect this outcome when you plotted against me? What? Can't handle it now. Ethan stopped what he was doing. His dark eyes stared at me. I sneered. Are you going to say you didn't intentionally show up there? I'm tired of hearing that excuse. I raised my chin, looking down at him. You staged a heroic rescue, married me, and used my family's influence to climb up in the family. Ethan, your scheming is disgusting. Chapter 4. I originally thought it was an accident. Until one time, when I visited the family, Ethan, who was usually not favored, was called into the study by Mr. Fu for a long talk. Sean then subtly told me that my fall into the water might have been a setup by Ethan. He even sent me screenshots of chats where Ethan used a fake account to hire people to spread rumors. It proved that Ethan was behind the escalating rumors, forcing me to marry him. Nora, I apologize on Ethan's behalf. Sean looked at me with deep remorse. I was so angry my hands trembled. I took a deep breath. Sean, this has nothing to do with you. If Ethan wants to use me to climb up, he needs to see if I'm willing to be his stepping stone. I'm really sorry, Nora. If you need anything, just come to me. Thank you, Sean. I smiled, but my feelings for Sean cooled significantly. After all, this was an internal struggle within the family, and I was just caught in the middle. I didn't fully believe Sean's words, so I had someone investigate. The results matched what Sean said exactly. I had indeed been manipulated by an illegitimate child. From then on, my little pranks on Ethan turned into real humiliation. I knew he had entered an architectural design competition and spent a year on his winning model. On the day of the award ceremony, I went to the venue. When Ethan went on stage to receive his award, I loudly questioned him. He's an illegitimate child, a disgrace. How can someone from such a family be a role model for future students? My words caused an uproar, and after deliberation, the committee revoked Ethan's award. Watching him being escorted off the stage, I felt an indescribable satisfaction. When we got home, Ethan asked me for the first time why I did it. I looked at him mockingly. Why? You know why. Since you did it, own up to it. Ethan, don't think you can use me as a pawn. He looked at me, then shook his head and said he didn't. Of course, I didn't believe him. Ethan didn't explain further, just lowered his head, looking pitiful. But now, facing my sarcasm, he just took a tissue to wipe his mouth and said calmly, "I have work to do. I'll leave now." I stared at his back, feeling an inexplicable heaviness in my chest. Chapter 5. After that morning's argument, Ethan didn't come home for several days. Coincidentally, my dad called me home, saying he had something to discuss. I packed a few clothes, planning to stay with my parents for a while. If Ethan wasn't coming home, why should I stay there? Unexpectedly, I received shocking news when I got home. "Nora, our family is bankrupt." My dad looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. His once black hair was now gray, and his always straight back was hunched. "How is that possible?" I couldn't believe it and turned to my mom. "Mom, Dad is joking, right?" My mom turned away, wiping her tears. "Your dad isn't lying. Our family is indeed bankrupt." I felt like I had been struck by lightning. My dad explained that a year ago, our company got stuck in a project, causing a financial crisis. He tried everything, even mortgaging our house, but it was no use. "What project?" My dad smiled bitterly and looked at me deeply. To be honest, it was a project we were working on with the Fu family. My mind exploded like fireworks. The Fu family? "Do you know why we insisted on you marrying Ethan?" My dad sighed. "Your mom and I knew you liked Sean, but the Fu family wanted to swallow us. If you married Sean, it would give them leverage over us." I was still in shock. "But Ethan is also a Fu. Ethan is different. He didn't want to return to the Fu family." My mom touched my face. "And we could see his feelings for you." I sat on the bed, my mind reeling. The Fu family had stabbed us in the back, and Sean knew. The Ethan I had always despised was actually on our side. A crazy thought formed in my mind. Could it be that Ethan really had nothing to do with what happened 3 years ago? This thought wouldn't leave me. I couldn't wait and rushed to Ethan's company. Chapter 6. I learned about Ethan's startup later. I had thought he relied on our marriage to get resources and funding from the Fu family, but maybe that wasn't the case. I finally found his company using the GPS. I looked up at the tall building. This was my first time visiting Ethan's company as Mrs. Fu. The receptionist was friendly and led me to the top floor. "Mr. Fu's office is the first on the left." "Thank you." I nodded and took a deep breath, walking towards Ethan's office. Just as I was about to knock, I heard voices inside. "Lion is back. Isn't it time to end this miserable marriage?" I froze. "Lion? You haven't been home for days. Have you been with her?" Then I heard Ethan's familiar voice. "Yes, she just got back and doesn't know anyone here. I'm looking after her for now." Ethan paused. "Don't tell her I'm married." "All right." My blood ran cold, and I felt like I was in an ice cave. I stumbled home, looking at the cold, clean kitchen, and laughed bitterly. So that's how it was. No wonder he hadn't been home for days. He was with his first love who had just returned. When Ethan came home and saw the mess in the living room, he rushed over and pulled me off the male model, sending him away before turning to question me. "Nora, what are you doing?" His voice was filled with anger and coldness. I laughed hysterically. "What? You can find someone outside, but I can't." Ethan was stunned. The next second, he smelled the alcohol on me and frowned. "You're drunk." "I'm not." I stared at him. "Ethan, did you know my family went bankrupt?" Ethan pursed his lips and nodded slightly. I sneered and pointed at the divorce papers that had fallen from his briefcase. "So, you can't wait to divorce me and make room for your first love?" "Ethan, I didn't expect you to be so devoted." Chapter 7. I vaguely saw Ethan frowning. "What nonsense are you talking about?" I laughed softly and pushed him away. Isn't it true? Ethan, if you had someone in your heart, why did you marry me? I didn't even know why I was asking this, just that there was a burning anger inside me that would destroy me if I kept it in. Now that my family is bankrupt, you must be thrilled, right? Are you trying to get back at me? My mind was completely chaotic. I said whatever came to mind. Until something warm and soft covered my mouth. I felt myself being lifted and then sinking into a soft cloud, slowly descending. Someone kept calling my name softly in my ear. Nora! I seemed to have a vivid dream. In the dream, Ethan looked at me tenderly and caressed me. I woke up with a start, finding myself in my bedroom, my clothes changed into pajamas. Fragments of memories flashed in my mind. I clutched the blanket, my heart pounding. Did Ethan and I really? You're awake. I looked up sharply to see Ethan's handsome face. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, feeling uneasy. Ethan was just as good-looking as Sean, perhaps even more so. His high, straight nose, probably inherited from his mother, added a touch of nobility to his features. Drink this first. Ethan handed me a glass of honey water. The temperature was just right, the sweetness perfect. I lowered my eyes, feeling a subtle flutter in my heart. I bit my lip, ready to express my feelings. You. Ethan spoke first. I have something to tell you. He took out a stack of white papers. Sign here. I looked at the words divorce agreement printed on the paper, my face turning pale. You still want to divorce me? Ethan paused. It's just temporary. Temporary? I held back my tears and laughed. Temporary divorce? Is that even a thing? Ethan, you really know how to joke. He pursed his lips and looked at me steadily. You've always wanted a divorce. So now you're going to grant my wish? Ethan said nothing. I realized I hated his silent nature. Is it because you think my family's bankruptcy will drag you down? I closed my eyes and asked painfully. Or is there another reason? Neither. Neither. I couldn't help raising my voice. Fine, then tell me who is lying. Ethan frowned and stood up. Don't overthink it. Am I overthinking, or are you doing too much? My throat was dry. Ethan, don't worry, I'm not the type to cling. Just give me an answer, and I'll sign immediately. He stared at me for a long moment, then sighed softly. My heart sank. So, he did have someone he liked. That lion must be his first love. Numbly, I signed the divorce papers. Through the window, I watched him drag his suitcase out. I sat on the bed, dazed. Ethan didn't take a penny, leaving with nothing. Of course, to Ethan now, my money meant nothing. My heart ached terribly, and I curled up. When did I start liking Ethan? Was it when he made breakfast for me every day without fail, or when he would help me out of my high heels and into the flats he had prepared after a party? I smiled bitterly. Maybe he had done these things for someone else before, which is why he was so skilled. Forget it, I had tormented him for so long. Ethan must hate me deeply. Why should I humiliate myself by clinging to him? Chapter 8. I sold the villa, hoping to use the money to pay off some of the company's debts. But it was just a drop in the bucket. Sean came to see me once. Nora, why don't you be with me? At least I can ensure you live a life of luxury like before. He reached out to touch my face, but I slapped his hand away. In your dreams. Sean's face darkened. Nora, I'm only offering to help because of our long-standing friendship. Don't be ungrateful. I looked at him coldly, as if seeing him for the first time. Sean, the incident where I fell into the water wasn't Ethan's doing, was it? It was you who framed him. Mentioning Ethan made Sean's expression turn ugly. If that bastard hadn't ruined my plans back then, he and his mother would have remained nobodies. How could he have achieved anything now? I took a deep breath. So, you set me up to fall into the water, then saved me, and pressured my parents to marry me? Sean admitted it quickly. Yes, it was me. Your father refused to marry you to me, so I had no choice but to take drastic measures. Learning the whole truth made me tremble. So, I had really misunderstood Ethan all these years. And I had humiliated him so much. I covered my face with trembling hands. Why? Ethan is also a member of the family. Why did you have to slander him? That bastard? Sean sneered. Don't be ridiculous. An illegitimate child trying to take things from me? If we hadn't stopped his mother back then, do you think Ethan would still be alive now? What do you mean? I sensed something different in his words. Sean's face changed slightly, and he clammed up. Chapter 9. To support my family, I chose to work at a bar. I didn't have much time, and we needed money every second. The bar was the quickest way to earn it. In a private room, a group of rich young men ordered drinks. The manager asked me and another girl to deliver them. The young men, seeing how pretty we were, kept urging us to drink. The other girl couldn't hold her liquor and started to get dizzy after a few drinks. Seeing this, the men began to get handsy. I couldn't stand it and grabbed the drink meant for her. I'll drink it. Then, I downed it in one gulp. Wow, this girl is spicy. How about this, drink this whole row, and I'll give you $10,000 per glass. How about it? I looked at the row of depth charges and bit my lip. In the past, $10,000 might have been just enough for a meal. But now... All right, you have a deal. I picked up the glasses, the bitter liquid burning my throat as I drank. The noise of the music and voices around me blurred. My consciousness began to fade. In a daze, I felt a hand on my waist, and I snapped awake. I stood up abruptly. What are you doing? The man I pushed away looked angry. What? I spent so much money and can't even touch you. Someone recognized my face. Hey, isn't this Nora? What? Now that your family is bankrupt, you can't act high and mighty anymore. Where's Ethan? Isn't he a hotshot in the business world now? Why isn't he helping you? Right, after how you humiliated him, any man with a spine wouldn't forget. For some reason, mentioning Ethan made my tears fall uncontrollably. Nora can cry too? I have to say, the high and mighty queen crying is quite a sight. The man approached me with ill intentions. I wanted to dodge, but my body felt heavy. Suddenly, a hand grabbed the man's wrist. I heard someone exclaim in fear. Ethan? Ethan? I looked up through my tears. Ethan, you're here. He looked at me for a few seconds, then spoke softly. Why did you let yourself get like this? I sniffled and pointed at the men. They said they'd give me $10,000 for each drink. Ethan laughed, and I heard him grind his teeth. That's it. I nodded. Ethan's face remained expressionless, but the man whose wrist he held began to wail. It hurts. Ethan, let go. When Ethan didn't move, he started cursing. Is this woman worth it? Are you crazy? Have you forgotten how she humiliated you? I held my breath, then heard Ethan speak calmly. How she treated me is my business. What does it have to do with you? Who are you to judge? Ethan, you're just a dog following Nora around. Yes. Ethan said casually. I'm happy to be her dog. Chapter 10. I was half conscious as Ethan took me home. The car was warm, and the alcohol made me sleepy. My head bobbed like a chicken pecking at rice. I mumbled incoherently. Ethan, I'm sorry. Ethan paused as he fastened my seatbelt. I sniffled. I shouldn't have made you sleep on the floor and caused you to get sick. I shouldn't have dumped your food on your bed. And the award ceremony, I shouldn't have disrupted it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said those things. It's okay, it's all in the past. I snuggled into his chest. Ethan, I know the truth now, I was wrong. I apologize. Will you still like me? I vaguely felt the person I was leaning on stiffen. Then, something soft and light touched my forehead. It was gentle and slightly damp. I couldn't believe the same thing happened twice. I looked at the pajamas I had been changed into, feeling a mix of regret and hidden joy. The house was quiet. I got out of bed barefoot. The decor of the room was exactly like Ethan's old bedroom. I opened his wardrobe and found no trace of another woman. I smiled and left the room. Just then, the door opened and I turned around quickly. Ethan. But it wasn't Ethan who came in. It was a young girl. I was stunned. The girl was carrying a bag of groceries. She looked surprised to see me. You must be Ethan's ex-wife? My heart sank, and I gritted my teeth. And you must be Lion? It seems Ethan mentioned me. The girl happily put down the groceries, then opened the shoe cabinet and took out a pair of slippers. Why are you barefoot? You'll catch a cold. Here, wear these. I clenched my fists. Well, she seemed very familiar with this place. I took a deep breath, refusing to show weakness. Thank you. Lion took the groceries to the kitchen. I only buy the groceries. Ethan will cook when he gets back. If you're hungry, you can order takeout. No need. I forced a smile, feeling bitter inside. How could I have assumed Ethan had no one just because there were no women's clothes in his wardrobe? Lion's presence was like a slap in the face. The girl was very friendly, perhaps confident in her relationship with Ethan, so she was fearless. She talked to me a lot. I learned that Ethan and she were neighbors. When Ethan was a child, he almost starved to death. It was Lion's mother who found him and took him in. Later, Lion's mother died unexpectedly, and Ethan was taken back to the family. To repay the kindness, Ethan worked to support Lion's education, even sending her abroad. Hearing this made my heart ache. This was a classic story of a savior and a first love. Compared to Lion, I was just the villainess. The sound of the fingerprint lock unlocking came from the door, and Lion jumped up excitedly. It must be Ethan. The door opened, and sure enough, it was Ethan. Lion? He was surprised. Why are you here? You should be glad I came. Otherwise, your ex-wife would have starved. Ethan glanced at me awkwardly, then introduced us. Nora, this is Lion, my sister. I know. My tone was sour. A sister, huh? Ethan seemed to understand my thoughts and asked Lion. Did you bring that boyfriend you mentioned last time? I was stunned. Boyfriend? Lion blinked. Ethan, didn't you disagree last time? Ethan gritted his teeth. I said bring him. Lion nodded quickly. Seeing this, I seemed to understand something. You two, really are siblings? Ethan sighed in relief. Of course. Lion realized something and opened her mouth wide. No way, did you think I liked Ethan, this old man? Ethan's face darkened. Who's an old man? Sorry, I misspoke. Lion quickly apologized. Watching them, I couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 11. Later, I curled up in Ethan's arms and asked him why he wanted a divorce. He was silent for a while before speaking. He hadn't lied to me. It was a temporary divorce to create the illusion that my family was isolated, to deceive the Fu family. I discussed it with your father. Didn't he tell you? It turned out that my family's bankruptcy and Ethan's divorce were all part of a plan to fool the Fu family and Sean. My parents knew, my husband knew, and I was the only one kept in the dark. I wanted to confront them, but Ethan pulled me back. Don't blame them. We all thought you liked Sean. Even if we told you the truth, you wouldn't have believed it. Ethan buried his head in my neck, his voice muffled. I felt ticklish and tried to move away. Are you jealous? Ethan gave up. You never wanted to marry me in the first place. That was because I was deceived. I thought you plotted against me. Anyone forced to marry someone they didn't like would have a rebellious attitude, right? I poked his chest. So, when did you start liking me? Ethan thought for a moment. Probably when I first returned to the family and saw you. I smiled teasingly. Love at first sight. Ethan leaned in to kiss me. You could say it was lust at first sight. Ethan. He panted in my ear. Nora, who has a better body, me or the male model you hired? I was dizzy from his kisses. Why you? Yours is better. Okay.